Does the idea of sewing with knits frighten you? Are you afraid to sew with knits because they stretch and because they slither and they slide and you're afraid that it's difficult? It's not difficult if you know the tricks and if you know all the steps. One of the things that I like to do with my knits, of course, is to hem them. I've had a lot of failures in hemming my knits, and I've come up with this way that works really well for me. Knits are stretchy. They need to be stabilized. And so I use a product called Heat and Bond Light. It's a paper-backed fusible web. So my pattern tells me that I need to turn up 3/4 of an inch for this hem. So I've cut a number of strips of this 3/4 of an inch wide. And with my iron, I'm going to fuse these along the bottom of my knit. And I just bumped my camera, so of course now everything's out of view. I'm just going to back it up a little bit. Sorry guys if I'm making you seasick here, but you need to be able to see what I'm doing, otherwise there's no point in it. Okay, my paperback fusible web, I'm going to fuse along the bottom of my fabric. Now I have not yet sewn my side seam, so I'm going to avoid the side seam area. My seam allowance on this particular pattern is 1/4 of an inch, so I'm starting 1/4 of an inch from the edge. And I'm just going to lightly place it along my fabric and just give it a light shot of steam. Notice that my pieces are small. I've been using scraps, so I'm going to move this along. I'm working on one of those felt pressing mats, and I must tell you, I really like it. So, changing the subject back to what we're doing again, my little pieces, I use scraps, I overlap them. So you'll see that I've overlapped by a little bit here, and now I'm fusing the next one on. And then I get to near the end, find another little scrap, and I'm fusing it on again by overlapping just a wee bit. And I see that I'm short by about 1/2 an inch there, so I'm just going to tear a little chunk off, and I'm going to fuse it onto the end. And there we go. The paperback has been fused to the hem of this. I'll catch up with you in a few minutes after I get the rest of them done. So I'm back. I finished my side seams, and now I'm ready to tear the paper off and to fuse up the hem. Tearing the paper off is just a matter of just pulling the paper. You can see that there's a shiny film left behind, and that's the fusible part. So I'm going to go around and I'm going to pull off all the paper. And yeah, it's ending up on the floor. The cat will play with it, and eventually I'll find it somewhere else. Okay, where did my camera go? Oh, the other way. Okay, I don't want to lose you here. So my strips are 3/4 of an inch wide, so I'm going to turn up along the edge of it 3/4 of an inch. You don't have to measure it because it's already been measured for you. You take it or bring the iron to it and give it a little puff of steam. And there you go, it's fused up. When I come to the seams, which is where I am right here, I flip the seam allowance in one direction and then in the opposite direction, and I fold it up over that flipped seam allowance so that I don't end up with a large lump. I end up with a medium lump on each side of the seam. So I'm there now, and I'm going to press it. And that holds it in place. I'm going to work my way around my hem, I'm going to work my way around my sleeves, and then I'll be back. I'm back. I've done and pressed up the hem all the way around the bottom, and now I'm working on the sleeves. The sleeves are a little bit trickier because they're very narrow, so you can't just plunk the iron on it because then you'd end up with press marks on each side. So what I've done here is I've stuck a few pins in with the heads pointing away from where the iron's going to hit, and I'm just going to touch the iron along the edge of the hem to fuse this up. Just a little bit, a little shot of steam, maybe 2 shots of steam, and lift the iron, and hopefully it did get it. Then I'm going to turn it so now the unfused part is along here, and along the underside. Flip it over to make sure you don't have any weird things going on underneath, and that's one of the reasons that I pinned it, because I have had weird things go on underneath. I'll put my arm right in front of the camera, and I'll grab the iron. And yeah, so sorry, my arm is right in the way here. So you just have to imagine that you can see what I'm doing. But I fused it down. So now it's sort of fused all the way around. I'm going to get the pins out. Now that the pins aren't there, I'm going to do a better job of steaming it and fusing it. I'm turning it a little bit so that maybe you can see what I'm doing. Yes, you can. Okay, so just a good puff of steam, and then turn it. And a good puff of steam, but only in the center area. I'm avoiding the edges because I don't want press marks. And there, that sleeve has been pressed up. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other sleeve, and then I'll be back.